So what do you think, Michael? You think it's time to talk about the Halloween franchise again? You know what's really creepy about this is if you look close enough, you can actually see his eyes in there. I don't know. It's kind of weird. It took me like a month to realize that. One thing that is so funny to me, even though Halloween is one of my favorite horror franchises of all time, is that this simple, low-budget indie horror film that John Carpenter made way back in the 70s, just trying to make a very scary movie for a studio that gave him a chance, has somehow now, many years later, spawned a multi-universal franchise with different timelines and different continuity. Just a simple story about a guy that wears a white mask, carries a butcher knife, and goes around and kills babysitters or his family or whatever else. Somehow we are into this multiverse of the Halloween franchise now. I don't even know where they could possibly take it moving forward or what they would even try to connect it to. Plus, the 70s at this point are starting to be a long time ago, so even connecting it to the first film is going to be more and more difficult as time goes on. But as it stands right now, there are what I would consider 5 official timelines of the Halloween franchise. And even though I did rank all of the Halloween films individually in my Halloween retrospective video, and even then, you know, sometimes as time goes on, a movie moves up or a movie moves down, kind of depending on when I rewatch them and how I feel about it. But regardless, one thing I did not rank was the timelines themselves, as in which timeline of Halloween do I think is the ultimate best experience if you want to go on the journey of Michael Myers and Haddonfield and all of the murders that ensue. So in this video, I wanted to talk about it, and I am going to rank the 5 different timelines of the Halloween franchise from least favorite to my favorite timeline. Just as a quick refresher, what I would consider the 5 timelines, and I found this nice graphic online. I don't know who made it, but thank you very much. It's much better laid out than my timeline board ever was. The first timeline is going to include the original Halloween, moving into Halloween 2, then Halloween 4, 5, and 6, which is considered kind of the Thorn trilogy of 4, 5, and 6, starring Jamie Lloyd as the main character. Then the next timeline would be the H2O timeline, which goes from Halloween 1 to Halloween 2, then skipping all the way to Halloween H2O, and then ending with Halloween Resurrection. We also have Halloween 3, which is just by itself in its own timeline. They, of course, were going to try to shift the Halloween franchise into being more of an anthology where just something creepy, something scary and weird happens every single Halloween night. And even Halloween 3 itself is not connected to the first Halloween because they're watching Halloween on the TV during that film. So it is the only film in that universe, but it's still a Halloween film, so it has to count. Then we have the remake timeline, which is Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 and 2 in its own continuity. And then finally, we have the most recent timeline, which is the Blumhouse trilogy, only spawning off the original Halloween and then having the trilogy of Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends. So those are what I consider to be the 5 main timelines of Halloween. All of them have their pros and cons, some a lot more cons than pros, but we're going to get into it, and I'm going to give you guys my ranking of how I would particularly prefer my Halloween timeline. And everyone's going to have a different answer. These are just my opinions, but let's get right into it. So dead last for me is the Rob Zombie remake timeline. And here's the thing. I'm not a Rob Zombie hater. I like a lot of his other movies. Devil's Rejects is one of my favorite movies of all time. I like House of a Thousand Corpses. I like Lords of Salem. I like some of the other stuff that he's done. But when it comes to Halloween and Michael Myers in particular, I think this was the complete wrong and totally opposite direction that you should ever go with this character. I think one of the scariest things about Michael Myers is not necessarily explaining the lore about his backstory or his family or what makes him tick or what turned him into a serial killer, because it's just scarier to me to think that it could happen to anybody for any reason. Some little kid, 6-year-old could pick up a knife and just decide to kill someone, and they're just this vessel for evil, vessel for darkness, and there is no explaining it because it is just beyond the realm of human understanding, right? Like, we're just not supposed to understand the evil that is Michael Myers. He went in a completely opposite approach with the first Halloween film, giving this entire elaborate backstory where he comes from this broken home, his mom's a stripper, his stepdad's abusive, and yada yada. But the thing about it is that it's very like standard serial killer backstory that you hear. I mean, maybe in a way to kind of ground it or make it feel more realistic. I guess it kind of makes sense in that aspect. But when it comes to Michael Myers, I just don't feel like that works whatsoever. There are some things about the movie, the first movie, that I like. I think my favorite part about it, and I talked about, if you see my retrospective video, I'm going to be reiterating some of the same points here, but I really do love all of the scenes in the mental institution with Dr. Loomis and child Michael Myers and that sort of back and forth. Now, I don't think that works well for Michael Myers, but in just a standard, psychopathic child character inside of an insane asylum where the doctor's trying to understand him, if that was its own movie and it wasn't Halloween and it wasn't Michael Myers and it wasn't connected to this franchise and it was just a movie about that, I would find that fascinating. And those are my favorite scenes of that movie. There's other things that don't make sense about how Michael Myers goes from being this chubby little kid to just being this giant, like jacked mammoth bodybuilder type character while he's in an asylum. I guess they're allowing him to work out and eat a lot of protein because I don't see how that happens. But after that, I think the movie has some okay moments. It has some okay kills and it's just fine. But that's where it ends for me. Like, it's just fine. Like, it's just okay as a horror movie, as a slasher movie, but as a Halloween film, not my favorite. And then, of course, when it comes to Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, I think this movie is abysmally bad. I think he went in a completely horrific direction with it. I think all of the characters in the movie are absolutely insufferable. I don't even think the kills are very good. I don't understand what he did with Michael Myers. I don't understand what he did with Dr. Loomis's character and turning him into just like an insufferable asshole. Laurie is just screaming the entire movie, and it just doesn't work for me whatsoever. All of the visions of the horse and Michael's mom and whatever he was doing with that, it just does not fly for me. Not a fan. No thanks. At the number 4 spot of the timelines, I have to put Halloween 3. And this isn't me disliking the film. I actually like Halloween 3 a lot. This is just the unfortunate fact that there is only one movie in this timeline. And if you are comparing it to the other timelines, well, we have more to work with, you know? And Halloween 3, I think, is a great adventure into this idea of turning this into an anthology. I love Tom Atkins in it. He's such a badass. He's such a suave motherfucker. Just love this dude. I like the concept of this weird sort of ancient ritual to kind of like bring forth. Like, I looked into some of the lore of the movie, and like all of the snakes and bugs and things like that coming out of the mask is supposed to be like this portal to an opposite dimension that's bringing all of these things forward, and you know, this apocalyptic event of like killing all of these children at once on Halloween night. Then there's robots in the movie. That's in there too. I think Halloween 3 is a lot of fun. I love the music in it in particular. Great score, great soundtrack. It's just a really fun movie. The only thing that puts it this low on the list is just that we have more to work with moving forward, but I do really enjoy it. Number 3 on the Halloween timeline list is going to be the Blumhouse trilogy. Now, I am very mixed with the Blumhouse trilogy, and I think that's why it's kind of in the middle of my list here, because I'm very 50-50 on it. There are things that I like about it a lot, but there are other things that just frustrate me to no end. The Blumhouse trilogy, of course, is the newest Halloween timeline. It decides to make itself a sequel directly only to the original Halloween, making the biggest difference of this timeline being that Laurie Strode and Michael Myers are not siblings, which has been an established lore in all of the other timelines, minus Halloween 3, for as long as Halloween 2 has existed. So since 1981, it has been the established lore that Laurie and Michael are siblings. But that was never addressed in the first movie. It was never intended in the first movie. And John Carpenter has admitted that when he wrote Halloween 2, he just kind of threw that in there because he didn't know what to write. Fair enough. Okay. But Halloween 2018 Kills and Ends decides to take the narrative approach that they are not siblings. It has been 40 years since Michael Myers has attacked, and he has now escaped again. The things I do like about these movies is, number one, I think they are filmed and shot very well. I think the cinematography and the way that it looks is done very similar to the original Halloween, particularly in Halloween Kills when they do that flashback sequence to the 70s. I love that. I would have wished that we could have got a whole movie in in that flashback, that was great. It's just that the setup goes nowhere, and I'll complain about that in a second. I also love how Michael Myers himself was depicted. I like the way that the actors played them, how his mannerisms were, the kills themselves. In all three movies, actually, the kills are great. So if you're looking for Michael Myers to have great slasher moments, that's here. All of that stuff is fine. The things that bug me are the inconsistency in between all three movies and also a lot of what they do with Laurie Strode's character. And then, of course, you have Halloween Ends that destroys all of the setup and build up of the first two movies and decides to focus itself on a brand new character. I get that they were experimenting with something different, yada, yada, yada. But ultimately, going from Michael Myers being at his peak, like most powerful in Halloween Kills, to just being a crippled old man in the sewer, and then focusing on a brand new character in Halloween Ends, barely giving us any conclusion whatsoever. They don't follow through on the police officer's character arc, and that's what I was talking about from the flashback of the 70s, because there was this whole big character arc about his guilt, about when Michael Myers attacked and he accidentally shot the other cop, and they covered it up, and he has no conclusion with Michael. He has no confrontation with Michael whatsoever. And, all the stuff with the Corey and Laurie Strode's granddaughter, the chemistry just was not there. So forced, so cringe. Why Laurie Strode was all of a sudden now living back in Haddonfield when in Halloween 2018 she's living in a gigantic fortress. I get that the fortress burned down, but like the inconsistency is that 2018 is in the continuity that only the first Halloween happened. So for 40 years, she was building herself up to be this like combat expert living in a fortress ready for when Michael would attack, even though he has no incentive to attack her again because they're not siblings in this timeline. And then that whole time he's in the asylum. But then now when Michael is broken out and you know for 100% of fact that he is on the loose, she just decides to live in town. Yeah, she has guns in the house, but like, it's just the difference between those two. And I don't think that her character progression between 2018 Kills and then into Ends made any kind of sense for her to do that, to go from, being so paranoid, living in a fortress, to just living in the middle of town, just casually. Just doesn't make sense. And that's like the biggest thing for me, is just like the trilogy itself is just so inconsistent. There's so many things that don't make sense. It's like each movie was just kind of written on the fly. It doesn't feel like it was designed to be a trilogy, even though that's the way it was promoted and released. And I just have a lot of problems with that. And then just for a personal preference, I do like the fact that Laurie and Michael are siblings in the majority of the timeline. It works for me. It's an aspect of the story that I enjoy. I understand completely that that was not the original intent of the first movie, and I respect the idea of the Blumhouse trilogy going back to what that original was with those two characters. But because of that, it doesn't really make sense to continue Laurie Strode as the main character, especially 40 years later. And then you guys heard my rant about Jamie Lloyd, or the actress Danielle Harris, because in the Blumhouse trilogy, they give Laurie Strode a daughter, and nothing against Judy Greer, like she's a fine actress, but you finally have an opportunity to put the two lead characters, Jamie Lee Curtis and Danielle Harris, in the same movie together, because that's never happened. And those are like the two final girls that are associated with the Halloween franchise. You have this great brand new opportunity, new timeline. So it doesn't matter that Jamie was killed. It doesn't matter that Laurie was killed. You have an opportunity to put them together, and you don't take that chance. You don't put them together. Just blows my mind. Like, that is like the biggest wasted opportunity in this entire franchise, in my opinion, to not put those two actresses together in the same movie. What the hell were they thinking not doing that? Insane to me. All right, anyways, the top two timelines. All right, at my number 2 timeline is going to be the H2O timeline. So this is Halloween, Halloween 2, jumping forward 20 years, Halloween H2O, and ending with Halloween Resurrection. And this would have been close to being my number 1. But the thing that ruins it is goddamn motherfucking Halloween Resurrection. So despite my problems with the Blumhouse trilogy or the Rob Zombie movies, My actual least favorite Halloween film is Halloween Resurrection because I think it retroactively ruins the perfect ending for the franchise. So, Halloween 1 and 2, I of course love. And I love H2O. And H2O is where I think Laurie becomes a great character as she rises. And I think that they actually handle Laurie Strode's character dealing with PTSD from the first Halloween way better in H2O than they do in 2018. That's a whole other thing. But the fact that it builds up to the final climactic moment where she just cuts off Michael Myers' head, finally rising up against her trauma, against her backstory, against her brother, because they are siblings in this timeline, and beheads him. And I love how the movie just ends there. It just beheads Michael Myers, movie ends, Halloween theme plays. It is the perfect ending of the franchise. And they retroactively have to ruin that with Halloween Resurrection, and that's what makes this timeline number 2, because it just completely undoes that entire great final sequence of H2O, and for no good reason. The only reason is just marketing to put Jamie Lee Curtis back in the movie and to put her on the poster, but she has nothing to do with the storyline of Resurrection. It's only the opening scene. She's unceremoniously killed off after her great character arc in the last movie, and they do this whole stupid convoluted thing where they switch the mask, which doesn't even make any goddamn sense, because if you watch H2O, the person has plenty of time to take off the mask, all right, and can use his arms perfectly fine. There's no reason to keep the mask on if he's not Michael Myers. Absolutely stupid. And then they don't even follow that up with anything interesting. Okay, so maybe if they killed Laurie Strode in the beginning and then the movie continued the timeline as it's supposed to be, where Michael is killing off his family, so he would be going after Josh Hartnett's character. Why not bring him back? But he's not even mentioned in the movie. We don't get his reaction to his mother's death. We don't get to know what he's doing. Instead, it goes to completely stock, generic slasher film characters. Halloween Resurrection is the only film that creates all of these brand new, random, generic-ass slasher characters that nobody remembers. I don't even remember the name of the main character in this movie, right? Don't even remember her name. She's not even featured prominently on the poster. All right. It's like, doesn't matter. Like, the worst part about it too is that it ends on a cliffhanger. So you already had this perfect ending with Halloween H2O. Then you make Resurrection that retroactively ruins that, unceremoniously kills off Laurie's character, doesn't follow up on the main storyline, has a bunch of dipshit new characters, and then it ends on a cliffhanger. And we never see the conclusion of that timeline or that story. It's like, you had the perfect ending, and now we're just in a state of, there's been 2 different timelines, the remakes and the Blumhouse, since this. We've never gone back to this timeline, never will. And so now it's just in limbo. And I hate it. But Halloween 1, 2, and H2O are all really good. So on average, this timeline is still pretty good. It's just Resurrection that ruins it. All right, and my number 1 favorite Halloween timeline is the, I guess you could call it the Thorn timeline. It's Halloween 1, Halloween 2, then Halloween 4, 5, and 6. And to tell you guys the truth, whenever I rewatch Halloween, usually every October I go through the movies, I watch this timeline and then I end it with H2O, and I just kind of headcanon my way to make H2O canon to this timeline. I just think like, oh, Laurie was just a really shitty mom. She just left Jamie when she faked her death and never went back for her, and then she started her new life in California. But it's all still connected. So I just pretend. I just go Halloween 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and then I pretend that H2O was part of that, and I end it there. That's my Halloween timeline. Again, the only thing that brings this timeline down for me is Halloween 6. I know a lot of people don't like Halloween 5. I'm fine with it. I don't think it's great, but like I'm fine with Halloween 5. I like both 4 and 5. And I like Jamie Lloyd as a main character, and I think she goes through so much that she deserves more than what she got, especially when she was killed in Halloween 6. But I think this timeline gives you the most bang for your buck, because it gives you the most Dr. Loomis, it gives you Laurie Strode in the first 2 movies, and then it also gives you Jamie Lloyd in 4, 5, and 6, and I think she is probably my favorite protagonist. I would say Dr. Loomis, probably, just because Donald Pleasence is the badass. But then Jamie, and she goes through so much, man. Like, she grew up not having her mom, you know, whether she did actually die in this timeline. She faked her death in the H2O timeline. But, you know, she had to deal with that. And then Michael starts to come to kill her when she's like, what, 6, 7 years old, like super, super young, getting chased around town by Michael Myers, as Loomis tries to, you know, get back to the town. And I just really enjoy these movies, and I grew up watching them too. So obviously there is like nostalgia nostalgia bias that's attached to this, because these were the movies that I had, always seen on TV, and these were the movies that I had rented and watched since I was a little kid. I was so invested in the storyline, and that's the thing for me, is like, it might sound silly because it's just a slasher movie franchise, but I really was invested in the story. I like that Michael and Laurie are siblings. I like that Michael is, for some unknown reason, going out to kill his family. I like Jamie as a main character. I like Dr. Loomis hunting him down. The whole thing that you could do over and over again, I just enjoy it. So I just like this series of movies because I get the most of that. I get the most of Michael going to kill his family. I get the most Dr. Loomis, and I get the most 80s style slasher movies within this series, which I personally enjoy. The only thing that brings it down is Halloween 6. But overall, Halloween 6 does suck, okay? But I don't think it sucks as much as Resurrection. And I don't think it sucks as much as Halloween Ends. It's pretty close, but it doesn't suck that much. You got Paul Rudd in there. I don't know. He's just kind of there. The whole cult ritual thing was never really something that I enjoyed. Like I said, I don't really like learning too much lore about Michael Myers. I kind of just like the mystery of it, of not understanding why he does what he does. But 6 also does have some good kills. It is the final Donald Pleasence, Dr. Loomis performance. And a lot of people say they like the producer's cut more, which I cannot agree with you on there, because I think the producer's cut makes Michael Myers more of a bitch. Like, it just has him taking orders from the cult and being stopped by magic rocks on the ground. Like, it's fucking weird. Like, that's not what you want to see Michael Myers do. You want to see Michael Myers go in there and kill all the cult members himself, as he does in the theatrical version. So that's the version I prefer. But I don't think 6 is bad enough to bring the entire series down for me, because it is still my preferred timeline, and so that's the one I'm going to go with. So there you go, guys. That is my ranking of all 5 Halloween timelines. I'm sure many of you will disagree, but it is just my list. Don't take it to heart. It's just what I prefer in my Michael Myers movies. Anyways, where is Michael? Michael, come back here. Michael, what is your favorite Halloween timeline? I think he says the one where he gets to kill a lot of people. Michael, that's every timeline. Michael, you're not even in every timeline. What do you think of Halloween 3? Anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Tell me your ranking of the Halloween timelines down below. Thanks as always for watching. If you guys want to support the channel on a deeper level, I have a Patreon, merch store, all that stuff down below. It does really help me out a lot more than you think. So if you're feeling frisky, I'd appreciate it. If not, that's okay too. Just like the video or comment, or don't. You don't even have to do that. Just watching it is pretty nice too. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you next time.